I wanted to do a video about how to do spiral kneading, sometimes called spiral wedging. It's a technique for removing air from clay and very commonly used, but it's quite tricky to learn, and it took me quite a long time. I remember taking a good 2 or 3 weeks before my body started to understand finally what my brain was trying to tell it to do. And part of the problem I had was there weren't, at the time I learned, there weren't any good videos on how to do it. There were a few people trying to explain it, but the trouble with all these techniques in ceramics is people get very good at it with their hands, with their bodies, and they find it very difficult to explain through words what's happening. And I'm probably about to have exactly the same experience, so I do hope this is more instructive than the ones I followed. But still, I'm sure I'll be doing things that I can't really explain. Let's see how I go. I'll think about it as carefully as I can to see if I can say what I'm doing. Kneading. So there's kneading and there's wedging. And I don't know if those are the right words or not, but there are 2 different actions that I'm talking about with those words. And so I call wedging this. Let me do it sideways on. So wedging for me is taking a piece of clay, cutting it in half vertically like that with a wire, and then slamming the top half down on the bottom half, and then just doing that again repeatedly. So I call this wedging. And it's not like I invented the term or anything, I just learnt, when I learnt on YouTube, that's what it was being called. As opposed to kneading, which is more of a spiral. There's some sort of turning or mixing of the clay in a rotational way with kneading, whereas wedging is much more layers upon layers upon layers. I'll do a lot more about wedging when I show how I colour porcelain. In fact, I broke into the video of doing that in order to show you this, because I'm going to use some of the coloured clay I've been making in this to see what happens to it when we spiral knead it. So that was wedging. So kneading, yes. So there's the classic, 2 classic ways of kneading, as far as I know. Remember, I didn't have a classical education in pottery or ceramics at all. I've learned from YouTube essentially, and I'm just trying to put some of that, the learning I've got, back into the community, because it's a wonderful thing to be able to learn through videos like that online, but it's fraught with danger, and the kind of mistakes you make, mistakes I've certainly made, mean hopefully I've learned a few lessons that I can pass on. So I'm going to show you how. Kneading. So one of the kinds of kneading I'm not going to do or show you, or I'm not very good at it really, is ram's head kneading, and this is where it does involve a circular action, but I'm going to push down like that and lift it up, and then push down again, and then do it again, and keep on doing that. And eventually that, after a while, you get this, I guess that's the ram's head, there's the eyes, and there's the horns developing, the spiral horns. Now I find this very difficult to do, you may have just seen, not least because I need a lot of clay with a K. Some of my pots are 20, 30, 40 kilos, and I need a lot of clay to make those. I don't need 40 kilos in one go, but I'd rather not spend my time trying to knead 20 little balls of clay in order to make the pot I need. So the bigger the piece of clay I can knead at one time, the quicker, the easier my life is in the end. I'm going to take this off because it's going to get very warm while I do this. So that's what I'm not going to do, the ram's head kneading. Some people are excellent at it, and it's no problem, and they get it completely, and their bodies are attuned to it, and they know what to do to avoid injury and all those sorts of things, and by all means use their videos to learn how to do that. So as ever, it's my ignorance that forces me a certain way. Now, spiral kneading then in that case, I'm going to start off by making my clay into an oblong, a rectangle on all 4 sides with a kind of squarish profile. So, and the way I do that is I just throw it from side to side, pat it a bit on the ends, that way, just rotate it 90 degrees, do it again, and just do that a few times. Now with only 3 kilos, that doesn't take very long. There we are, I'm ready. I've got my oblong. It takes a little bit longer if you've got, say, I mean, you can spiral knead a lot of clay in one go, because you'll see that we're only really handling or lifting a very small part of, or a small fraction of the overall piece. Whereas with ram's head kneading, I feel you have to deal with a lot more of the big lump of clay. The bigger the lump of clay, the harder it is to do that motion, which is why I choose this method. So how are we going to learn to do this? It's very difficult, in my experience, to teach your body this trick, this technique. But if you've ever done anything like learning to tap centre, or all those little techniques of throwing where you just do it a lot, and after a while you go, oh, I see. Why couldn't I see it before? and you get the same experience again and again and again of, it's so easy, why couldn't I do it? Well, it's because it wasn't easy to start with. If your body doesn't know how to do something, it's very difficult to teach it. It takes a long time to teach the body anything. But once it does have it, it's really deeply ingrained and you can't really shake it off. So starting with this oblong, what's the idea? The idea, so the concept of spiral kneading, let's start with that first, is somewhere in this block of clay may well be an air bubble, or 2, or 10, or 50. And some of them are very, very small, and some of them might be quite large. I suppose we could cut it into sections and have a look, but then we've got to put those sections back together again. And in putting those sections back together, rather like the wedging process, you could introduce some air between the layers. Often I find if I'm using recycled clay and I'm using a lot of wedging to make lots of thin layers and put them one on top of the other, I sometimes do introduce air between them, and that's a problem. If you do it right, then wedging is a way of removing air from clay as well, and I sometimes do that too, but I find this is more thorough. So yes, so somewhere in here there might be some air, and there might also be, if you've got other kinds of clay, there might be little bits of grit or stone or some leaves or something in there that shouldn't be there, foreign bodies I suppose we call them, that shouldn't be there, and somewhere in there all these things might exist, and it's our job to get them out. And one way of getting them out is to expose all of this clay to the surface. How can you do that? It doesn't seem like it's sort of possible. Only a mathematician presumably could work out how that would, some topologist could work out how that would could be done. But that's exactly what spiral kneading does. It exposes all the clay in here to the outside world, in particular to our plaster vat I'm using in this case. And if there was an air bubble in here and it gets exposed to the surface, then it'll pop. And if there's a little bit of grit and it gets exposed to the surface, it'll fall out. I've rarely had that happen, because mostly I use porcelain, and it's very rare that you get any bits in porcelain. And unless you're recycling a lot, in which case it can get all kinds of dust and twigs from plants hanging around, so that is possible. So that's the idea, getting foreign bodies, including air and other bits and pieces, out of the clay by exposing all of the clay to the surface, and that's what spiral kneading gives us, as I'll try and show you. How do we begin? There's a left-handed way of doing it and there's a right-handed way of doing it, and I don't know which one is which, but I use my right hand to do one of the actions and my left hand to do the other. But I realise that I misinterpreted the YouTube video I was watching, where the guy was using his left hand to do the thing that my right hand does and his right hand to do what my left hand does. And that just made me crazy. And then I looked at more videos of people spiral kneading from all around the world, and I found some of them did it one way and some of them did it the other way. And recently I did a survey on Instagram where I showed a post of me spiral kneading. I said, I think I'm doing it the wrong way around, but this is the way I've learned so. And almost exactly half the people who responded said, yeah, I do it that way too. So my hypothesis is that it makes no difference whether you do it right-handed way or the left-handed way, and I haven't seen any problems doing it either way. And even if there were problems doing it one way or the other, you can just flip the clay around upside down afterwards, and you'll see what I mean. Sorry, it's already getting far too technical without doing anything. All that was a preamble to say that I'm going to show you the way I do it, and I might try and show you me learning to do it the other way, because that will reflect very much your pain and difficulty that you're finding if you haven't done it before, because it'll be, I remember that, I remember how difficult it was, more mentally than physically, to try and work out how to do this. So yeah, I'll start by showing you what I do, and at some point I want to show you how it works, what's going on inside the clay. I've thought of an idea of doing that, and we'll see if it pays off. So, unfortunately, beginning to do this, the first few movements are the hardest. They're the most difficult to get right, and which is a shame, because that's the first bit you're going to learn. It would be so nice if it got more and more difficult the more you did this. So the last part of kneading perhaps would be the most difficult thing. That would be more natural, and perhaps you'd learn it quicker. But it turns out that it's the first few movements which are the most difficult and not obvious. The idea is we're going to just twist this whole piece of clay around and around and around itself. And by doing that, some of the clay inside will eventually come out to the surface, it'll move out towards the surface, and correspondingly all the clay that's currently on the outside of this lump will move in towards the middle. And that will just keep on, every time we go round and round and round a few times, that process will repeat. And eventually the thinking is, the idea is, that anything like air bubbles will eventually move to the surface along with the clay, and they do. So I think I'm trying to stall for time here to think how to get going with this. I should have thought about this as a course and really planned it, but I'm just going to show you what I do, and if this doesn't work, we can have another go. We can try again with another video if you leave some comments that, well, that didn't work for me, Tom, I didn't understand that bit, or 13 seconds in you did something that just completely baffled me. I'll think again, because I'd really like there to be an excellent video in the end on how to do spiral kneading, and if I can make that video, that's great. I don't mind who does it, but it needs to be there because so many people do it without really explaining it.